Says we're gonna see what
It
we
used to. It always seems that it snows on more meeting days. We used to.
On meeting days.
Last year, you'd sit here and always just watch it snow.
That's all right.
Last year, it just all snowed out there. Meetings would start 4 a.m. So
Maybe it's unique. Oh, thanks. Oh, very hot. Anyone there? We've got 3, it looks like, on the call. Hello, is anyone there?
Yep, I'm here.
Is that Lainey?
Yeah, it is.
Hi, Lainey.
Hi.
This is Misty from Lewis and Clark County.
Oh, great. I'm so glad. Well, we can hear you clearly. Let's wait till we get in our seats and then we'll make introductions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming over. Bring Steve. You know, I didn't. I was kind of on the fence about it. I didn't because it's our winter carnival weekend. Oh, wow. And I'm missing today, so. Nice to meet you.
Oh, we're so glad you're here. Hi.
Move one chair.
Yes. So yeah, I know. Yes. It's you. Come on, here. Come on in. Thanks.
We're going to squeeze around the table. How are you doing? Eleanor, pleasure to meet you. Thanks for coming over today.
Hi, Gardner. Eleanor's and Richard's our chair.
Yeah, these are all here. How was the drive over?
it was not too bad until the last 15 miles or so.
Yeah.
It's not that bad. On the little running time.
All South Montana.
Right.
You didn't want chairs around the table or?
Virginia City.
That's good. Good.
Yeah, being able to take that road shows yourself a mileage. Probably not good.
All right. I'm one of those people who holds on the side every chance
Two more coming around the table.
Yeah, and I can.
Move one over.
Well, I've been out here 3 or 4 times this week. I think this is the best dress so far.
I'm driving your way in the morning. Basketball tournament in West. Yeah.
West Hills.
Okay, great.
Yes. Yeah. Is that next week?
I think so. I guess. I gotta see you right here.
Sit down with you a little bit. It's a small group.
It's a small cozy group. It's a small cozy group of resort tax communities in the state.
Are you guys big Sky?
I'm Red Lodge. You?
Gardner.
Big Sky.
All right, well, welcome to Big Sky, everybody. Thanks for making the drive over on these snowy roads. Of course, we're all excited to see the snow. So, always mixed blessings around here, but really appreciate you guys coming over. We do have an agenda because we have more than 2 board members represented. We have to run this as a public meeting and with an agenda, so that hopefully everybody has that agenda in front of them. I would like to just switch 2 items of business here, and I'd like to do the introductions before we do the public comment portion. And so with that, my name is Kevin Germain. I'm here with the Big Sky Resort Area District and have worked there at Big Sky for about 15 or 16 years. I'm just really pleased you guys made it over, made the drive. So,
Steve Johnson, Big Sky. James Kigley.
Richard Gardner.
Eleanor Stone Gardner.
Buzz Davis, Big Sky.
And I'm Whitney. I'm the one behind all the emails and calls. Thank you for being here.
and we have some folks on the phone. Can you please introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Misty.
Sure. I'm Misty Edwards. I'm with Lewis and Clark County, and we have 2 resort taxes, one in Wolf Creek and one in Craig.
And this is Laney Gospoderic, and I'm from West Yellowstone.
Hey, Misty and Laney, thank you for joining us via telephone today, and you saved yourself a drive on some snowy roads.
Yeah.
So our agenda today, we are going to have a public comment period at the very beginning of this meeting and at the end, and the rest of the discussion will be for either Resort Tax Board members or staff. And so with that, is there any public comment to begin this meeting? Hearing none, we're going to jump into new business, and we already got to know one another. So our first agenda item that we have is legislative issues for the 2019 session. And I'll kind of give a quick overview and would like Mike's help on this a little bit. But I think most of the resort areas know that Big Sky historically has hired a defensive lobbyist every legislative session that we pay to track the bills and keep us updated on what legislative happenings. And I think we have a handout from.
It was emailed to everyone.
It was emailed to everybody, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has an email of some of the bills that our lobbyists, we have a new lobbyist this year. We haven't worked with this gentleman, so this will be our first go around. But we got this list of bills that we're going to be watching this session. We have a legislative subcommittee with our board that will track it, and Mike is on that. Steve, I believe.
And the bills are now up behind you.
Yeah, and as you see, there's just a lot of draft requested. So we're not really sure what the bills are, but they put them in as placeholders before the session. So at this stage, we don't have a lot to sink our teeth into until we actually start seeing the bill drafts, but it's starting. I'm not sure when the session starts in January, but it's coming up on us. And one of the thoughts that I have that I would like to throw out is I feel like, one of the reasons we started this meeting is because we have so many common interests with the other 9 communities in the state on these legislative issues. And for this session, we've already budgeted and we'll be paying this lobbyist, but I'd like to see moving forward if we'd like to share the cost pro rata on our resort tax collections. And so we can all be trying to stretch our dollars and utilize this information, but we will offer up for this session to give you guys the info that we get from our lobbyists as we go through it. Yeah, so the next section, we're gonna ask for some. Next section, Steve.
Anybody have any inside scoop on what Polachowski is up to? Generally revised resort tax law?
Yeah. It's really for gateway cities. Cities, they're trying to take resort tax law and stretch it outside the place like Bozeman. It's a local option tax. Tax is what they're looking to do. They tried to have that in last year, but they're thinking, well, if we could get it all over the state for local option taxes for cities our size and such, maybe we can become the gateway city. They will not qualify the way we all do because the percentage of their employment in the hospitality industry and such isn't a high enough threshold because they have university in the hospital and different things like that.
So they wouldn't pass the
won't-
current Department of Commerce
They have-
test.
Yeah, they wouldn't pass the current test. However, they're trying to get that changed as such, and that they should probably look at a little closer to it. They would really understand, even the resort tax law itself, when we all use it and such, it's, not exactly, they're really trying to pick certain categories, the retail and certain services and such like that. But then they also pull part of the resort tax into it and starts talking about luxuries. And if you read it right, the luxuries don't have to be bought by a tourist. You can tax it if the board wants to, because it can't say just, it says or, and there's an or in there, not an and or anything. So, you need to look at it closer.
What constitutes a gateway city?
What?
What constitutes
That,
that?
well, until you see the written, I've seen a draft, but it didn't really spell it out quite well enough. I think it was too early to bring it in and such. In fact, the draft I saw was provided by not our lobbyist, but a person that applied to be the lobbyist and such and talked about it, but it was really basic at that time.
5,000 or more people,
5,500
55 or more.
or less is what it currently says.
No,
But this is what theirs is saying, is 5,500 or more, unlimited.
So many miles from the gate of a national park. They were going over this with us when we were at the city managers conference. Trying to remember what else, that they could pick certain, like you said, it had hotels or something that they could directly tie to tourism would be then taxable. And they were only looking at 3%. I don't think they were looking at going to 4%. I'm trying to remember what else. That was what, 2 months ago? Yeah.
Well, they even kind of went off on a tangent a little bit, almost saying like we're looking at drafting up something that may be countywide. That if your county included or was adjacent to a national park, the county could do it, and then they would disperse it amongst the communities in the county.
So it's still being drafted,
Yeah.
but it could affect, especially if they're trying to get in on having our funds spread out
It was
somewhere else.
Who's the Park County Commissioner? Bill
Burr.
I know he's kind of been working with them on this.
Okay. I mean, I knew that Bozeman's been working on a local option sales tax, but I thought they were gonna stay away from resort tax statute and work under another statute, and that's why.
Well, that's
use
why the
other-
title is
yeah.
interesting. Generally
That
revised resort tax.
Opens up resort tax.
Got my attention.
And I was
That's
just, a lot of this,
everybody's
what I know is
attention.
dated, it's
Yeah,
a couple months ago,
Yeah.
but
I don't
it
think
was really October.
we know, all we know is probably, it might affect us and it might not, but it could drastically if they go to spreading it over a county or something like that. So I think we all have to pay attention to it, and that's why we feel it's important to have a lobbyist there paying attention to it, because we can't from here as such. So that is it. I think most of it you can't tell too much about.
Right.
The increase in the accommodations and rental tax that Lynch is doing, that's really talking about the 3%. That's what the 3% is done on now. You have your 4%, and then the 3% goes to the general fund. They're looking for more general fund money out of lodging and car rental, because they want to take that tax up is what it's, I'm almost sure that Just so we
That's
can-
the 7% state tax.
Well, the 4%, it's go out, the 7's into 4 and 3.
That's right.
This is, the 3 is on accommodations and rental, and it goes to the general fund.
Right.
That's what Rich is talking about. He's not trying to make more money for this, for tourism,
Right.
tourism at state or resort tax. He's trying to build the general fund, I'm sure. You know, other ones that aren't even brought up there and such as how, and they could be good revenue producers for us, is how they tax the online third-party sites. It's, you know, it's not the, it's the portion that they're keeping, and they right now can do that at the 3%, but the way the 4% was written, they haven't done that in the past. I think they'll probably try to change that, but if they're changing that, it would be good for the resort tax district to make sure that we will get the same benefit from it. If the state can, for both the 3% and the 4%, make more money off of the online sites, why shouldn't we be able to make it, because it's the same type of same deal. So that's one we have to watch close and such. The only other one will be when they start looking at just online, outside of the hospitality, if they start looking at online sales of merchandise. Is it the type of merchandise that we're doing? Where it's going to be hard for resort taxes, we are all under the map of what we all charge. Because every community looks at it a little different because of that luxury part of it and such, and how they want to treat it through their exemptions, and, you know, how do you go to Amazon and say, you know, we have 10 areas and we don't, you know, we all sell different things, we all tax different things, but we want you to pay us for the things you sell in our community. That's where you have to be more like, maybe like they're looking at in Bozeman when you get down really specific categories that everyone is unified in, is uniform, taxing the same thing when we're versus we are and what we tax. That's gonna be real complicated to try to collect money on those types of items on the online sites, but we should watch it still. It might be some way down the road, we'll want to look at it differently. What we do tax, but then again, anytime you open up a bill to help yourself, you open it up so that someone can stand up and change it so it is disadvantageous to you. So, you know, you better want something real bad when you open up the heart of your bill on what you're taxing and different things. So that's all I can tell you about, but it's going to change a lot, but those are you can see a lot of things are going to affect us, and that's why we need a lobbyist watching after it and being in contact with each board, so in case the board has to do things and we've made it so that, you know, the obviously in the committee of two can, if we have to, can make decisions and work fairly fast. Sometimes they'll contact you one day and it's coming up for a vote the next day. Then you don't have time to pull a board meeting together and have a public hearing. Any questions or anything else that you've heard that they could help out? That was good. That was good.
All I can remember, I should say.
But that's
Yeah.
good information, because that county thing is something that, you know, I certainly have.
That would be a game changer. Yeah. For what it's worth, another thing I've expressed to our board here locally is, and Mike and I are going to be on this subcommittee keeping an eye on this stuff. I'm very interested in what, if anything, is going on with liquor licensing laws. We are all in resort communities where liquor licenses have a lot to do with entertaining guests as well as producing a lot of revenue for us. And the liquor licensing laws in Montana are archaic, to say the least. So I'll be curious to see what goes on with that.
But it's a touchy subject in a lot of your communities, because anyone that has one of those license values is very high.
Oh, yeah.
Especially a lot of them have mortgages even on them.
Sure.
They get their license, they had to pay so much, they borrow money on. So that's a real touchy one, but it's one that we have to pay attention to.
Any other thoughts on the legislative issues coming out of this session? Challenges. Substantial nexus discussion.
I got it.
Do you got it?
Yeah.
All right, please, guys.
Okay. So I think this is a similar problem we all face is we have our district boundaries, right? But there are lots of businesses that come into the district and conduct business and then leave the district at some point. You know, an outfitter, for example, you know, brings the horses in. Their trail may or may not be in district, and how are we collecting that resort tax? And keeping a firm line across the board for all. So I'm opening that to discussion to see what you all do, if you do have a hard and fast line on that, or if you just only tax those businesses that physically have their place of business in district. I use district. I know you guys are communities. Sorry. Does that make sense?
Think of a food truck. There are things going on all the time, and it's surrounded by food trucks, and none of them start in the big sky. So, you know, they are selling something that is funded by our businesses. How do you handle people when their business is located?
Business is unique in that we don't have outfitters, so I mean, we're probably smaller than any of the other communities here, but pretty much any business that is they're steady, they're open all season, and that's it. The only thing I can think of that might be the caveat is we have an art show every year, and artists will come in and they'll set up their booths, and they have to come and pay resort tax on every bit of every item we sell. You can't think of anything else. We don't allow food trucks. I mean, we're pretty stringent on a lot of things, but I may not be the best person to ask. Yeah, you know, hardcore. But yeah, as far as, you know, but if someone were to come in, I think anything like the art show, anything like that, if food trucks were allowed, it would just be, you know, sometimes it's kind of an element of trust, you know, so how much they come and report. We have, like, I used to run the art show, that's right, a little bit about it. But they come in, they report their numbers. We don't look for receipts or anything, but we just get our good faith that they're giving us the 3% that we're owed. And that's as simple as it gets for us. But again, I may not be, I'm a minority opinion.
So whitefish taxes on the ours. We have a pretty good farmer's market, which is probably our best example of this. Where we'll get, I don't know, 50, 60 vendors in every Tuesday from, you know, June through September. And we make the farmer's market give us a list of all the vendors that come in. We send out letters to all of them, remind them all, the farmer's market reminds them. If we end up, they have a vendor and we end up not collecting anything, we make sure that the farmer's market doesn't allow them back. So we try to go after it. It's, you know, some staffing, I think, is a little bit of an issue, trying to stay on top of all these little nuances, but we also catch all kinds of anomalies too. We have businesses that collect tax that are outside. Okay,
Can you give us an example of that?
I'm trying to think of the last business that paid it. We had to let them know, yeah, you're not in whitefish.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It was an accident. Okay.
We've had like Best Buy randomly started collecting resort tax if people have an address in our zip code. And I had to go and call them and be like, you guys, you're in Kalispell, you aren't even close to our city limit. So we have those issues too that come up when people call us and say, I was like, they refunded everybody supposedly. But yeah, so from farmers market, food truck point for City Whitefish, we do have those that come in. Outfitters and guides are not specifically exempt. So if they're performing at the point of sale services within Whitefish, they would be taxable. I would have to check. We do have a fishing guide business within Whitefish, but they don't fish in city limits. So I'd have to look to see. I know all of their retail sales are taxable. I would have to look and actually look at their accounts to see if we're taxing the service that is performed outside of city limits. We have a brewery tour. He pays his tax.
Well, I mean, I am an outfitter. My store is bang bang in the middle of the district. I pay on all my outfitting services because they have to come to my store or if they're running through my business. So even though none of my outfitting service is actually provided within the boundaries of the district, I pay on all of it. Country-wise, there's an outfitter whose base is 5 miles out of town, whose clientele probably staying in a motel and paying the tax in Gardner, but and he may be picking them up at the motel, but the services are provided out. We don't hear from them. We've got people that live 40 miles away that own VRBO in town. If there's a building, we make sure we ask them to pay because the business is inside the district and the service is being provided in the district. We'll chase them around as far as we have to, but because otherwise the people who happen to, it's not fair to people in our name.
But we do have guides with storefronts in the district.
Right.
Who like, I'll meet you at the Mammoth Hotel. Out of the district.
Yeah, but they should be paying on that if their business is in Gardner. I meet people in the park, I meet people in various places down. But the business is operated out of the district. And so I figured that, at least I've always figured, and tell anybody else that we should be paying. Especially since it's not our money to start with, it's the client's money.
Right.
Well, one of the points you raised is the point that we hear around here. I mean, our outfitters who have bases within the district, they collect the tax and they're very honest about it, but they compete with outfitters who do the same thing, but start somewhere else. But, they conduct their business, they guide their trip, whether it's a rafting trip or a fishing trip or whatever, inside our districts, and how do we capture that? It just in fairness to the operators who are based here and, they're competitors and trying to get on a level footing with the other guys. So.
Yeah, the confusion is, is it one or the other, or is it both?
Right.
Well, where the sale is transacted, exchange of funds,
You've got to
and where is the service performed?
Right.
And what,
You've got a district boundary that's such that the service can be provided within the district. Now, it may be that one of those people, like with my CUA with Yellowstone Park, if I have a trip that's partly in the park and partly out of the park, I only have to pay on the part that's in the park for the fee that I owe the Park Service for the permit to operate commercially in the park. And I would say the same thing probably ought to apply for somebody who is running a business and I don't know where your district boundaries are, but if their base is 20 miles down the river, say Gallatin Gateway, and they happen to be guiding up here, then yeah, they probably ought to be paying the same as we charge the person who happens to have a house down, in the district that's down the valley. They're providing a specific service in the district. I would argue that they should pay.
And Dana, it sounds like you said the point of where the point of sale and the service takes place.
Yeah,
That those weren't.
it's two. So with this specific storefront, there's an owner who owns the building, but he hires a bunch of outfitters. Those guys don't necessarily work out of that building. So for the owner of the building who has multiple outfitters, he has all of his retail services that are taxed. I know that for a fact. What I would have to look at is, and this is where resort tax is difficult because it's open to interpretation and it is varies among all communities, as we know. But I would have to look to see if, because we exempt taxis. So if you are just strictly picking somebody up as an Uber or something and taking them to a destination to perform the service outside of Whitefish, is that just because you're picking them up from in town, is that really the service being performed there? So we don't, so our outfitter is only restricted to hunting. I mean, it has specific items in there, but we don't have any that are in Whitefish. It's literally this one fishing company.
Okay.
Our mountain, our Whitefish Mountain, is not in the city. So anything that's like an outfitter up on the mountain has nothing to do with us. But yes, I have to look and somehow I do not think that just knowing from looking through delinquencies, right? You can just tell, you would assume one of them is delinquent. I don't think they're actually reporting resort tax for the outfitting service, but actually just for any retail that occurs at the storefront.
And one thing that I thought was going to be a problem turned out not to be a problem but we have a marine facility there that services boats, rents boats, jet skis, all of that sort of thing. And so they pay resort tax on all that. Well, they wanted to bring in the sales side of things. So then they were going to start having significant dollar amount sales. And so what they did was they didn't want to have to pay resort tax. They called me and said, yeah, $100,000 boats are a luxury item. You don't have to pay resort tax. So what they did was they bought some property immediately outside of Whitefish boundaries, and then they set up their marine there. But then what they did before they opened, they brought all of their new boats, still wrapped in plastic, into Whitefish and set them all up at their place that they have there. And I thought, wait a minute. If this is going to be their showroom in Whitefish, so you meet up a salesperson, you decide on a boat and they say, okay, well, now drive over to that building to make the sale.
Right.
I thought this is gonna get dicey. But then when they opened, they mowed down more trees and stuff, and so they moved them all out there. So all of their showroom stuff's out there. But they're just doing everything they can. Of course, they're Whitefish Marine, so they want whitefish and all that. But
Interesting.
just right outside the door. But I thought that would be another one where we
That's
have
a perfect example.
a Nexus argument
Right.
as to, well, if they're stored here, if all of the discussion happens here, even though you may move the sale over there. So ended up not happening, but as part of the discussion, those are some of the things that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's a great example for us.
One of the first Nexus questions we came up with is handling online. And from our retailers handling online and that, whether it was or not, we ended up saying, yes, it is. It is because it's transacted there, but that's kind of moved back and forth as we have, in part because we started federal regulations sometimes about how things are done and stuff. So we still do it, but so there's really three considerations. And it's just not that it happens, it's what's happening. It's like some people say, rental cars should be taxed that. Well, if they're at the airport when they rent a car, they don't know what's coming through Big Sky. And quite frankly, they can go to Big Sky without stopping, just driving through our highway. So you can't say, because you used our highway, you have to, pay 3% down there. And so it becomes sticky on certain things, deciding how to do it, as opposed to an outfitter that might have their main office outside and coming up and using our river for fishing, rafting, whatever. We're just working our way through some of those things still.
Our stance on online sales right now is if you are a business within Whitefish with an online presence and you are shipping to somebody within the city limits, even if it's via USPS, we view that as that's really gone outside. If you're shipping it though, I'll say it's some furniture store with a name and you're taking your product, you do the online sale, but you're delivering it to a house in Whitefish with your truck that is visibly, signed or whatever, and it's your delivery truck, then we've taken that as that's taxable because you aren't doing a fully online transaction, USPS to wherever. They're really hard to track. So at least that was the prior city manager's interpretation. So in our code, the city manager has full interpretation of our resort tax and any questions that come up. So right now, Lowe's is an interesting one. We don't do anything about that, even though they're bringing their trucks in because they don't have a business in Whitefish. But say our Nelson's hardware, they took their Nelson's truck and delivered a snowboard to some house, they would be taxable for that. Yeah, that's online sales are sticky when we get to the federal level, and obviously with the Wayfair decision and with the state at this point, they've made comments that yes, for Montana residents, we're not sales tax eligible, resort tax we are, but you might owe it if you're shipping as a business shipping to another state. So it'll be interesting to see if they ever address it for resort communities, because that's what a lot of states are doing right now, is helping address that decision and what specific things need to be in there to help protect businesses from making it too demanding on their reporting of sales and collection.
So you're jumping onto our next
I know,
topic.
I totally jumped
No, which is great.
Sorry.
It's a good segue into to wrap up the substantial nexus. And Steve and Mike talked about it. Our biggest struggle here in Big Sky, we try our best to level the playing field, and we have wonderful business businesses here that collect and remit the resort tax on their services. And it's a challenge for us to see, and I'll pick on outfitters for a second because it's really the one that we struggle with the most. An outfitter from Bozeman comes up and does guide services within our district, and they're not collecting resort tax where our businesses here are. And so it's something we're struggling with right now. And even after this meeting, if you guys have any insight, if you could get that to Whitney, we would appreciate it. Mike?
The only real problem is county audit. They have to be very conscientious about saying which trip came in here. Some of them, as someone will say, well, when our people leave someday, they don't even know how far they're coming up the river or something like that. And we don't charge them the 3% because we don't even a rafting trip. One day, depending on how high the water is, they'll be launching in our district. Other days they'll be launching outside of our district. So what do they charge the tax to the people when they don't know where they're launching? I'm just trying to get what their arguments are, and then how do we go back and audit it? It'd be like going to a fishing guy in Bozeman and saying, okay, how many of your people threw a line inside our boundaries and such, so you can see where it starts to get complicated to try to get it in, but still keep the playing field level for our own businesses.
And because of the way the outfitter law is written, there may also be another issue about whose business it is. In my case, I pay on the trips I book. Some of the people guiding for me are employees. Clearly, I have to deal fully with that. But most of the fishing guides are independent contractors. Right. Many of them are not just independent contractors, but are also outfitters. That is, they own the business. And if I have outfitters coming into the shop, buying a few flies for their clients or getting their clients to buy a few flies, picking up licenses because they didn't have them, all sorts of stuff like that, some of which is taxable, some of which isn't. But I didn't have anything to do with arranging the trip. It's not my business. And they're based somewhere else. They just happen to be stopping in my store. And that's a different transaction than a trip that I arrange. And even with independent contractors, I'm assessing a booking fee. I figure therefore I will put a tax on that because it's happening. And I had, they wouldn't have the trip if I had to make the arrangements. But depending upon how your outfitter has his business organized, he may not own any of those he may not own any of those businesses. They may in fact be totally independent businesses. If the outfitter that took the trip is also collecting money from the client at the end of the trip somewhere else, I think that's sort of beyond your purview.
Well, I think part of the issue for us is the implications on these people of record keeping are pretty daunting at a period in time when they're just busier than all hell. I mean, trying to, track, yes, this, not that, yes, this, not, I mean, it's almost beyond comprehension.
Oddly enough, I don't really think it's that all onerous because most of the information involved is information we're required to.
They have to, it's outfitters.
Because you're outfitter license.
I have to report where we took every trip to the Board of Outfitters in order to get my license renewed. All the ones that launched on the Forest Service program, I have to report to the Forest Service. Once I take the park, I have to report to the park. I've got most of that information in hand anyway. So I don't know that it would necessarily be that all much of a problem. Yeah, but if there is somebody who's set up shop sort of on the boundary and running his business inside your district, but being outside the district, you have to look at what he's doing.
You already gave us a great idea. We've never checked with the Board of Outfitters and see really how much people are using and fishing within our district because they have to report that.
Well, user days are a big deal, right? I mean, tracking that stuff.
User days for the Forest Service, I have to report. With the state, I have to log every trip and identified which river segment they were on, or which body waters of Montana they were on. And some people's records might be sufficiently vague, but the state asked me to identify where I launched, where I got out.
All right.
That's great.
That is
Now,
good to know.
your rappers, unfortunately, are not covered at all.
Okay, another topic. All right, we'll move on. Dana, you got us going on the Wayfair decision. No, but go ahead. It's fascinating to hear what you guys are doing.
It is.
Well, we obviously aren't taking any steps at this point, and I'm the finance officer for City Whitefish, so of course I get GFOA did a big article on, you guys might take copies of it, about the finance side of it. They look at both the state and then the local side. And the information that, it really provided is that there are states that are taking the steps to be able to implement South Dakota's law that they have. And basically, one of the things that they really pointed out in that was that there's a safe harbor for limited businesses. So, and then there's issues of not being able to retroactively collect. And so they made it, South Dakota's law is, it took into account the businesses. So I think that's why the Supreme Court went with the way it did, is what it sounds like. From that, states are moving forward. Montana, because they're a sales tax state, basically they came out and said, all right, well, we aren't against it. Now, other ones that are part of the no sales tax states, they came out, some of them came out and was like, we don't like this decision because all of a sudden, they just didn't like the idea of having, I'm not quite sure why they did, but Montana came out, I'll just pick Montana. Montana came out and just said, okay, so businesses in Montana, we're not sales tax, but if you're shipping outside of the state, you're gonna have to pay attention and collect tax, basically. The problem is for us, that didn't really help us because we didn't get any state support to say, okay, we're gonna implement the rules so that we can collect for any online sales. So we have taken the stance that online sales at this point, we aren't touching unless it is delivered within Whitefish with a business's vehicle that is identified as Whitefish. And the hard part I see in this, not only is it enforcement and auditing, but the idea of city limits and boundary, district boundaries versus zip codes. And I don't know, and I'm sure Amazon and all these big companies have ways of determining, because obviously there's lodging taxes that they're able to determine. But for us as a city, it's great. But for districts, I can imagine if we were to go that route, you'd have to work with each vendor to know what a district boundary is. And I don't know where they would get that information.
The delivery addresses can be pinpointed with GPS.
With GIS. Within your district boundaries, would then have to be available to everybody and stuff like that. So, I don't know that we're gonna do any steps at this point from our perspective. It's kind of a wait and see what other, local governments can, probably, from what this article says, they're just saying work with your state to get something through. So the question is, do we need to work with our state to get something?
Do we all want to work with the state to get something going? Because we're the only tax, right?
We are the only kind of sales luxury.
And this is another trying to make things equitable for our business. And I'll use an example because it's snowing outside skis. We collect a lot of resort tax off of skis, and have heard from our local businesses that they're at a competitive disadvantage when somebody can get on Amazon and order the same pair of skis and not have to collect resort tax on it. So it's something that we've discussed, and at some point, I don't know if this is the year or this is the time to roll our sleeves up just to help our local businesses that are collecting and remitting resort tax.
The story I always hear is the UPS truck backs up to a local shop to deliver what they ordered, and they open up the cargo door and they see a wall of packages from Amazon.com. Yeah. They're getting delivered after they make the stop at that shop. And it just gags them. Understandable.
The interesting part's going to be how we differ on everything that we collect on Amazon. We have to have an individual list of each of us. Each of us and such do it, and I don't even know. I'm not sure if that can even be implemented. We will have to find out that it's not like, years ago, ago when we ended up with the hospitality, the 3% tax and such. That was supposed to be on 9 different industries or parts of the tourism industry in the state. And it was clearly defined what the tax was about, as opposed to how we are quite different because everyone defines luxury differently and decides how they're going to do their exemptions. So it's going to be hard to do it, but I'm just saying, you know, if you said, well, we tax all recreational equipment, Amazon could maybe say, okay, we know what recreational equipment is, and all the other little things that go along. And if you look between us, our districts don't even agree on what recreational equipment is.
Well, if we wanted to defend our local businesses, we just say tax everything. It gets delivered here. Just, you know, we'd rather see our local merchants be selling that stuff.
But I doubt if they let you tax things that we don't tax, things that are sold here, it would be a little discriminatory.
I don't think Amazon knows the intricacies of resort tax. Do what they're told.
So Whitefish is looking at this. Are anybody else concerned, Wes or Gardner?
Well, Virginia City is just like, we only do this resort tax 3.5 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's, you know, the point that would be how many communities would be worth.
Yeah.
What about Red Lodge?
We haven't really done anything with online sales at this point.
Okay.
But as far as some of the other issues, nothing different than what everybody else is talking about.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think our question wouldn't be trying to collect online sales so much from stuff Amazon was selling into Gardner as it is businesses in Gardner that are selling online out of state. And what's our liability there? And my personal decision was until somebody in New York comes and asks me for their sales tax, I ain't paying any attention to their sales tax. On the other hand, somebody in New York calls me up and buys a t-shirt and a hat. I charge during the period which we collect the tax, we collect 4 months, not 3.5. Then I charge a tax on it. Even if I didn't stick it in the mail to somebody going in, you know, in New York and Tennessee or wherever. And if it's outside the period, I don't collect the tax, and I wouldn't collect the tax from anybody else. Because it's my business in my town. So that, you know, that's, we've got a few people in town, I think, that run sort of online trading companies. Very few. But online, we've got a small manufacturer, but he's selling wholesale, so it's exempt anyway. I sell a very small fraction of my stuff wholesale. A lodge over on Ruby River, I shop in Michigan. But that's, so I hadn't felt that the definitions were particularly problematic for us, at least in Philadelphia. I figure by the time that big states live on sales taxes, get done dealing with Amazon and the next 15 or 20 people, will be many years before they get to us.
Well, the big guys are the target.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly Amazon has reached a level of scale where everybody would like to carve their way into that business.
Yeah.
It's not ignorable.
I'm wondering if this is something that we should look at with our lobbyists at the state level. Try to get the ball rolling on this. Because it is really unfair. You talk to the local merchants.
Well, we hear that all the time.
Yeah. You go down to the post office and there's racks of Amazon stuff.
Yeah, I guess I think the comment about the varying exemptions is that's like a really good point, because like Whitefish, we've got like 3 pages of exemptions, that's when I include them all. So knowing when it's a toothbrush, sunblock, lip balm, you know, versus or lawn and gardening equipment, we don't actually tax. So, you know, at what point, you know, Amazon's gonna have to determine between, is it a mountain bike that's $1,500 versus you know, household. So I actually think that would be a very interesting issue, whereas when they have blanket sales tax for them, you know, it's sales tax. You know, they don't do a lot of foods, I guess, comparatively.
I wonder if there's some common themes on the big items though amongst all 10 of us, you know. that we
Sure,
could
like the
say,
big ones at least,
yeah,
like
and
we need
here are the
these
ones, and you don't worry about the chaff, you just look at these are the larger items, and that's what we'd like to focus on.
$800 pairs of skis,
That's
or
right.
$800 fishing rods. I mean,
Yeah.
those are, people are buying those things.
Yeah.
But once again, you can look at West Yellowstone, unless it's changed, last time I read theirs, they don't tax sale of snowmobiles, sale of skis. Their clothes is restricted to logo t-shirts or shirts. Shirts, yours is 2 to 2, where some of us do all clothes.
underwear, yeah.
I'm not
it's a
saying all,
luxury.
I'm just, I'm
Not
not.
just logoed underwear.
I'm just thinking that, you can't even take this one item and say recreational equipment isn't uniform everywhere.
Yeah.
And how we get them, but to Buzz's point, yes, it's worth investigating and figuring it out, but it's not going to be near as simple as we think because we're so different. Because it's, you have to define it for each community very tight then as such. So, but we should look at it, but it's just the idea that clothes isn't even uniform or recreational equipment, they should really know there's a problem.
Yeah, if it's a problem that can never really be fixed because of all the differences, maybe long term we need to look at our trying to come together on what should be taxed and have it just kind of maybe have it in Montana Code annotated and we're all taxing the same thing.
Well, we talked at one
It's not a
time.
bad thought. I mean, it is confusing on how we all tax.
Amazon has more computers than God.
Yeah,
They
figure it out.
don't, believe me, they could do it if we insist.
And think of all the time we spend trying to decide what's taxable or not.
Yeah.
Now remember, you landed from with your package.
Yeah.
Through your backyard.
They can figure
Put it
this
on your back porch.
They can
They
figure
can
this
figure
out.
this out.
They can
That's all I
figure
would
this
say.
out. Don't feel sorry for Amazon.
I feel an obligation to our local.
Well, I think we should. That's what I feel too. And I would think the state would feel some obligation to its local businesses who are trying to make a living in the face of a behemoth like Amazon.com. And it's a legitimate concern. Candace, this has got to be a concern from the chamber standpoint too, I would think.
Yeah.
Defending small businesses.
Have to check with the Montana Chamber legislative topics identified for upcoming legislative session, and be happy to get back with you on what that stance is.
All right, I would love to see a matrix of all 10 resort tax communities on what we tax and what we don't tax. That would be
Yeah, that was actually one thing I was kind of wondering today was just trying to connect with a few people and maybe long-term be able to see their ordinances, we can exchange emails and kind of review what other communities are doing.
Or this is online, you can go to them.
No.
Yeah,
Fairly easy to find.
check the list.
You want to talk
It's
about
not as long as yours.
tourist tax? It's kind of related too.
Oh, you want to jump ahead? No, but James, that's kind of the point of getting us all together and why we started this 3 years ago is there's a lot we can learn from one another. And it may be too optimistic of a goal, but if at some point we could all be taxing the same items, it would certainly, as I think you mentioned, if you had it in state statute, it was clear what was and what wasn't. We spend a lot of time on this board determining what's taxable and what's not taxable, and it's
a compliance nightmare too.
It is.
I mean, that's the other side of it. And it's discriminating.
If it's state law, then you don't have to fight the merchants and say, well, this shouldn't be taxed. And you can just say, well, sorry, it's state law.
And that may be something we work on as a group over, it'd take more than just a 2-hour meeting, but getting into a room and really, here are the things and here's why we tax them and why we don't, and just kind of hear each other out. But I know we spend a lot of time debating what's taxable, what's not, and it'd be nice to be more black and white taxable.
You mentioned the farmer's market. And, do you have categories of stuff that's not taxable at the farmer's market? Because I was, so that people that are coming in with, bushels of potatoes and stuff like that should not be taxable.
Right.
Most of that goes to prepared food.
Yeah.
So it's all the food trucks. So the all retail,
Artsy crafts and stuff.
400 jars of jelly, that's a prepared food.
Well, we talk about the aspect of resort tax here. I'm new on this, so I'm just learning a whole bunch. This discussion is great. State law is written to tax luxury items in destination resorts. But philosophically, I think what we're all trying to do is make sure the tourists leave something behind, because we got a lot, so we're oriented towards taxing tourists, and state law is oriented towards taxing luxuries. And, how do you really reconcile that, or does it need some clarification?
Okay, so you just segued into that conversation. Let's go there on the luxury versus tourist.
Related thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think there's some things about it that kind of goes against taxing tourists separate from others that are buying the exact same thing. And I think by having the luxury tax, you essentially hit everybody. But you only tax those items, that's kind of the philosophy behind it. I mean, we're not taxing luxuries, but we really want to go after tourists. So you put the tax and you interpret it in such a way that it always goes towards those things that our tourists are going to buy.
And that's kind of the history with this board, is what are the things that tourists will buy? And if a local buys it, they're paying the same resort tax.
That makes the other side is necessities of life, right? Which are not luxuries. And that's what we eat every day here.
Even though a $100,000 Corvette has no tax on it. A vehicle is a necessity of life.
No, a real world example for us has been furniture. There's some very expensive furniture that we don't tax furniture. You could argue, a $10,000 sofa is a luxury. But we've made the decision that furniture is a necessity of life, and we're not gonna.
I had to do an interpretation on hot tubs.
That's a common one here.
It's a medical thing, and it's healthy and all that. Essentially, the way I interpreted it was, it's a luxury item. However, if someone comes in with a doctor's note, whether it's on a prescription or on the clinic or the hospital letterhead, saying that they don't even name their condition, we don't want to violate any HIPAA laws. But if your doctor says Adam Hammett would benefit from a hot tub, sign doctor whatever, and they took that to the store, then they could get by.
So where are we on medical marijuana?
We're good.
Right. We're all good.
It doesn't
We have
happen.
really good revenue stores right there.
Oh,
We looked at, hot tubs at one time, were taxed and such, where we looked at it in a different perspective. We did number one, we had a hard time thinking about if a contractor bought it one day and put it in a house that he was selling, would not be taxed. And if the owner bought the house and went in the next day and bought a hot tub, it would be taxed. That didn't exactly seem right. And number two, we just couldn't figure out how many tourists came to town and drove home with a hot tub. So we said, this is not what a tourist is buying, and if we're sticking along to try to do it along those lines, because when you start wandering out, and luxury is a pretty, personal, luxury to one person is not a luxury to another person and such. And if a tourist isn't buying it, if you start spreading it out, you start looking more and more like a general sales tax, because you're taxing everything in your community. If you want to say it's a luxury, a lot of things that are sold around here certainly aren't things that a tourist buys, that they go in homes, and they are luxury homes, but are they luxury items as such? So, the law does give us each board the discretion to define what they're taxing and such, and that's why we all look different, because they look at it differently and such. West Yellowstone, when I looked at it, yeah, they probably, snowmobiles, they tax, they just sold most resort communities and that, and I was like, how many people leave with a snowmobile? Do they come to buy that? There is maybe how they look at it and such. But then once they went down the road there, they also did their cross-country skis and such too. So everyone looks at it a little differently, but I think that last time we met, most people went around at the big table and said, all right, we kind of design our exemptions so that it's not, it's what a tourist buys. Like you were talking about a snowblower. I really don't think tourists come to town to buy a lot of snow blowers and things, so that would not be in my mind, something you would tax and such. You go in certain areas like on clothes, clothes, you can kind of say they're a necessity in life. But where we run into some of the problems in that are, we also have, there's two parts of the law. One talks about you pay on everything at hotels, restaurants, and such, destination ski resorts. Okay, if a destination ski resort has to do on all of the clothes that comes out of their sporting goods store, it's really hard for us to say, well, in the mountain they have to tax that, but down here they aren't going to tax it down below, so we have to walk that line in between. That's where you stretch the necessity of life. If our one set of our major businesses are collecting it just because the way the law is written, we feel that we will extend that same taxation down in the community down here. It has generally been some of the thinking that I've seen on the resort tax over the years. You can relate to that, and that's not a problem. Here's Whitefish Mountain is outside. Red Lodge has two different districts, so they can treat it differently. We happen to be the only one that has the resort inside our district, so we have to think about it differently.
One of the issues is we're just so close to the population. So they could make a decision, not to buy a hot tub here, just go 10 minutes and get the hot tub there. So I get it from that aspect too, whereas if you're in Garden, I don't know where you're at. Probably don't sell hot tubs.
Feel the boiling river.
But I mean,
I think we have to come to
It's a drive.
One of the things that, when we look at it and you can see that maybe it's not a tourist item, but our resort tax and what we're set up to do is to provide property tax relief to residents who are having to pay. Whereas the tourists aren't getting that property tax relief. And so our property tax relief is 25%, required 5%. The way they got ours passed was 25%. So I think for us, we take a look at it, it's like, is it a luxury? We really don't differentiate much between a tourist versus a resident, knowing that the residents are going to get that property tax relief. Obviously, we have, so when we talk about potentially looking at items and trying to get this all together, you want to talk about the most hot button item when we passed our resort tax was what is taxable.
Yeah,
and it took months of public meetings and just the thought of having to bring it up again because you talk about a luxury, you go to one of our lodges, which everybody interprets the hotel services differently. We actually exempt massages and facials at our hotel, so Whitefish Lake Lodge, beautiful lodge, pretty much tourists or staycations, right? Those are exempt right now, but there's a discussion of maybe we should really look at that again, and is that a luxury when it's in a hotel? Because interpretations, I think for you guys as resort is everything's taxable no matter what they're providing, and that's that you can read the code that way. Ours was just set up different back in 1995 when they first passed it, so it's interesting, but that is one of the biggest hot button items for Whitefish is bringing back up again what's taxable.
Yeah, and we know we need to make some corrections. There's some things that we want to correct, but at the same time too, we know we're coming up for a vote here soon. So we're
To renew.
trying not to shake the tree too much
So
before
we'll do
we
that in
re-up.
2023,
Quite frankly, if you property tax is things, more so that tourists want and not, it would be better
Correct.
chance to pass it as
Correct.
such. Like on yours, when I was looking through it, I kind of got a chuckle when I saw that dog food was taxed. Most people have a dog thing, it's kind of a necessity, at least for dogs. I mean, it's just different. When your people went out, it was different, and part of it, just like West Yellowstone, I said, when snowmobiles weren't taxed and they are another, I'm sure that was partially to get that approved through that at the time.
Well, there are two sides to this decision. I mean, one is politically what is acceptable to be taxed. But then the other side is once you do that, you got to live with it, and you have a compliance. So you have the compliance side of this thing. So the more intricate you make, yes, this, no, that. I mean, you just create a compliance nightmare out of that process. And I mean, I'd rather structure it in a way that we could expect compliance because it's so simple, but that may not be politically viable. So
Yeah,
it's tough.
the 3 pages that we have of just exemptions, not what's taxable. That is in our code. That was what was those public meetings. Anything after this has been done by city manager and interpretation and issued letters. So the 3 pages doesn't include every interpretation of all of like, how do you actually apply this? So it's, a lot of work went into this back in the day. So it'll be interesting to see when we bring up the renewal, how much time it's going to take us to go back through. If we make it more simple, it's interesting. You think it's, a lot, but then we get the stores calling. Hey, a chapstick with lip balm, is that taxable versus a chapstick without? Or if it has tinted color, is it a lipstick and is that cosmetics versus health care, hygiene kind of things? It's really interesting the way, some of the questions that will come up. And it takes time, but we probably only get the request for maybe like 4 to 5 interpretations a year. It's not very frequent for us because I think we've just been doing it so long and it's so detailed that we only have to really look at special cases 3 or 5 times a year.
Amazing special cases continue to pop up
They
since
still-
1994. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I would kind of worry about putting something into Montana code annotated in that you think about where retail has changed all of a sudden to Amazon over the past 20 years. We've become online retail sales. You just think about what kind of things would maybe be missed as technology and other types of products change, services change. It would have to be pretty broad in state law enough to allow for the newest and greatest things that become a luxury to tourists or anybody really. So it's interesting.
Anything else on luxury versus tourist? All right, we'll jump back up to short-term rental taxation, which has, I know, been a topic of the summit meeting in years past.
And Whitefish volunteered to take this agenda item for us.
All right, another one, Dana. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, you can pay for a software that costs $17,500. So with our new city manager, we've really worked with him to say, short-term they're one of the hardest things that we try to not enforce just on the resort tax side, but on our zoning and planning department, trying to enforce in an area that is driven by a resort community. You get a lot of short-term rentals. So we've moved forward and we've actually purchased STR Helper, and we have gone from 50 short-term rentals registered with the city because they're required to get a business license and apply for approval. We've gone from 50 to over 150 within a year, basically. So we've had a 200% increase in the number that have applied. And by doing that, we're able to track what resort tax they're collecting. The software allows, they look at the city limits and they check all the different sites, like 25 different sites, including HomeAway, VRBO, all of these sites, so that it doesn't come without a cost, and it doesn't come without staff time. But in the end, it's helped us enforce short-term rental resort tax collection. That being said, it's not perfect because when all of a sudden you have 100 new short-term rentals to follow, half that are reporting through a property management company, half that are reporting by themselves, it still is a difficult process, and I think that it always will be. The state of Montana recently has an agreement with Airbnb, so their Airbnb will collect lodging tax now for the state of Montana. Local governments and resort districts can apply and try to work with our flag. They can work with Airbnb to get an agreement. I've read a lot of good and bad things with these agreements, that Airbnb is kind of the behemoth here, and whatever they say was paid, that goes. It's kind of difficult to audit. They aren't going to be providing you much information. Supposedly it's enough to audit it, but that you still don't get the detail of what has occurred through their site. VRBO, HomeAway, I think, owns VRBO. So I don't know that the state of Montana has done anything with them yet, but I know that they're starting to work with other states to collect lodging taxes. So, is it something that Whitefish will look at? I think eventually, but what I've always read is that in the end, the agreement says if Airbnb is wrong and what they're collecting, not our problem. You know, you're going to find us on any errors, and we're not going to do anything. So I don't know, you know, with the time that we've taken to really follow up with all the short-term rentals, if we would actually go through that process. But I think it is out there for those that don't want to invest in the software and staff time. And that now Montana's doing it. It sounds like you don't actually, just because they're doing it, you get to kind of join it. And they're very secretive about these agreements. There's a few that have been released,
So
which is very
strange,
interesting. And
yeah.
I find it interesting because, you know,
I
all
know.
states are public entities, so
Mhm.
it shouldn't be open records, but Airbnb will not release. There's very few that have been released. So that's as much as I know on the state side of it, but for us, what we've done to implement it, you know, I think we've been successful at least more than we were. You know, we never knew registered short-term rentals. We've been missing out on those for years, and so now we can start following up with them.
But and on the flip side too, we made them all a business, so they have to get a business license.
That's what I wanted to ask. I mean, that's the teeth that you're using.
Yeah.
Correct. So we think we're bringing in almost enough money to cover what we're spending on the software, which is really kind of where we were headed. But then we wanted to kind of, you know, tag those that have multiple and just say, well, we're only one business, but I have 5 different Airbnbs scattered out there. So it's per unit.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they have to pay
Oh, yeah.
per unit. So that's one way we kind of got around that one. But you know, some of the short-term rental stuff too kind of centered around affordable housing.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
we knew we had a lot of illegal Airbnbs. So we have zones set up where you can have them, and then every place else you cannot have them regardless. So we have people in those other zones that have Airbnbs, and we just weren't enforcing it.
Yeah.
And so we let everyone know we're buying the software, blah, 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 we're gonna come after you. And so the idea behind it is they can take their accessory dwelling unit or whatever it is that they're using for short-term rental and then hopefully turn it back into a long-term rental situation.
Yeah.
So hopefully, you know, we're gonna take 50 short-term rental units and put them back into long-term rental. So it's kind of a, you know, kind of a two-pronged approach that you're looking at by doing that. So-
Once again, they're a city, so they're directly in charge of zoning.
That, and they can issue business licenses.
Well,
so
and they are authorized to do that too, and we are neither of those. Gardner's thankful.
Yeah, Brittany and I worked on, and Kristen worked on trying to find out about business licenses. And you can do them by counties, our county just chooses not to do it, you know, if we can work with them or in other places, if you are like us, not incorporated, but most of you are incorporated, so it does it differently. What helped a little, I think, will help us this year as far as going after these people's last spring when they had a special session, they were going after to get more revenue, they wanted to raise the 4% tax and the 3% tax, you know, and pull it into the general fund. The industry defeated that, and one of the ways they defeated it is saying, first go out after this money that you're missing out on, as opposed to raising the tax on us now. So, and the hotel industry is coming up with a bill this time. I haven't seen a copy of it yet, but they're copying it. I think Arizona is the one they like the best one. Maybe it's another state, and it's supposed to have something in it about a local tax. So we need to watch that one close, talk to your hoteliers, anyone especially that sits on the hotel board and such, and try to make sure that part about local innkeepers tax and such gets into that same bill, and so we can get that revenue just like the state gets it.
And from a compliance aspect too, is, you know, what if people over-record, you know, maybe they rent their short-term rental out forever. There are ways, I know STR Helper, you know, kind of tracks all the days that are X'd out, and you can kind of get a ballpark, but what they can't do is if days are X'd out, they can't tell you whether or not someone was actually staying there, or they blocked them out for a family member, or blocked them out because they would be out of town.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So it gets a little more difficult there. And of course, you guys are dealing with short-term rentals like we are, so you know how people try to hide them.
Yeah.
You know, try to stayed under the radar, so it's.
But when they hook up with Airbnb or VRBO, I mean, they are the Amazon.com of this business. I mean, they are the big target. And once again, I mean, they are totally computerized. They've got all the records.
Oh, yes.
There is no excuse for not being able to do this. If the state would just continue, you know, back us up and share the agreements, I don't know, I serve this is so serious.
Nor is there an excuse that well, you only collect the tax so much a year, and our company system doesn't work that way. Now, if you've got a system that can run the rate for the room up and down 3 times a week, depending on how many people you expect to be there that week, then you can figure out how to collect our tax for 4 months.
And Whitney, what do we use? What is the system we're using?
We were using STR Helper, but because of our addresses and the way that our district is mapped, they were having a hard time locating all of the physical addresses. Yeah, we're still a little in the dark ages on that respect. So we switched to a company called MuniRes, but it's very similar. It's just they do, instead of mapping the physical properties first, they go out and find the Airbnb listing, for example, and then they kind of do their homework backwards to try to find the location. And then if they can't find it, we get in our car and drive and try to find it. So you guys do that too. Right. But MuniRes. It's like municipal revenues. Yeah, so we can talk more about that later. But yeah, we have over 1,000 that they've mapped at certain times of the year. So talk about a staffing nightmare. But we're working on it. It's exciting.
That's a big challenge for us, and as you mentioned, Adam, it's not just lost tax collections, it's just we're losing more and more long-term rentals. I wonder,
Housing.
Just stripped out our housing market. And made our deal.
I just saw that in the paper this week, that if you're laying off teachers.
Right. The superintendent lived in a tent for a while.
No.
Because he couldn't rent a house.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
For something less than all his wages.
There's got to be a price for that. I mean,
I wonder on the tie-up, the short-term rental taxation, it would be interesting. You guys are using STR Helper. We're using MuniRes. I mean, and there's obviously pros and cons and costs associated with all those, and we could share that information for the other districts or communities that are looking into it. I'm also wondering if there's some efficiency in working together on licensing. You know, these are expensive software programs, and I don't know if you could, you know, we form some sort of entity that gets the license, and for each seat it's less, because that's what we struggle with. They're expensive, and we always struggle with, you know, are we spending more to collect tax than it's worth? And we all, you know, we want everything to be equitable. So sometimes we're like, yeah, we're going to spend more than we collect, but we want to make sure that we level the playing field. But the more that we can work on our costs, that would be advantageous for everyone.
I think it'd be easier if the state just picked it up themselves, because they
I
want
agree.
data.
Yeah.
You know, like,
That's coming up on our good segue.
Yes,
I'm going to
exactly.
segue into that next one, into the lodging data share in the state of Montana.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like we have some commonality in our frustration. I think there's little education, it seems, on what resort tax is and what we seem to bring to the state in some regards. And we've just had a continuous struggle with the data share with the state. For example, on short-term rentals would be a specific example. And, you know, especially with this Airbnb that we were left out of the conversation completely, right? So I guess I'll just open up the discussion with that. It sounds like I said, that there's some commonality and frustration with that. But you mentioned you guys weren't necessarily going to do anything and take that next step to go to the state for Airbnb because you're feeling like what you have is sufficient and you're satisfied with what you're doing. Is that correct?
You know, I think quite honestly, we don't have time to be doing this much, but
Yeah.
I don't see, you know, I see what Airbnb is doing, but if STR Helper is truly identifying those that are on Airbnb, we should be already getting it. So to go through, and I feel like with these contracts with Airbnb that they're maybe not in the best interest of the community to be able to actually then audit what
Okay.
you're getting. So at this point, we're forcing the short-term rental owners to report. Whereas then all of a sudden they're reporting to Airbnb, and then we would still have business licensing where we'd be able to, talk with them. But I feel like you could lose that connection with your local short-term rental operators because it goes to Airbnb, they don't have to report. So I think that could be one of the issues with those agreements. But I wouldn't say that we've left it off the table. The state always requests lists of us, of our short-term rentals. We have yet to ask a list from them, but now
They won't give it to you.
They won't. So, and it's interesting because I did read in there that the director of the Department of Revenue said this is confidential information.
Right.
Like, well, then why do we have to go? If it's confidential information, it must be confidential for us, but not because they're the state. We, as a city, we're a subsidiary of them, technically. So I think that's where our city attorney has held that we can give you a list of short-term rentals.
Okay.
We don't give them the resort tax figures. They just give a list of approved short-term rentals.
And then they cross-reference, but you don't get the same benefit of cross-referencing with their
What list they
lodging.
have of individual operators.
Well, they're protective of the bed tax, but they're not very protective of us.
Right.
I mean, that's it's.
And that's something to bring up with a legislator proposing revisions of things, is that it should go both ways.
That's exactly right.
We're as bound by confidentiality as the state is. So any information they give us in the performance of their duty and our duty is still covered by the confidentiality stuff. It's not a business secret that we're leasing to, Super 8.
Yeah, we're not gonna get the list, Airbnb's list of VRBO.
Yeah.
The whole world out.
Yeah, we looked at the SDR helper too, and then we started doing math on how much the software costs, how much do we might get, and then the added labor costs to try and enforce it. And right now, we're not really doing anything like that.
This is a significant purchase, and for us, we increased all of our business licensing because we felt that hotels benefited from us following up with short-term rentals. Retailers would benefit from us collecting resort tax and short-term rentals. So we are allowing those funds, which have always been general fund dollars. We've just increased them on a full business licensing, including the new short-term rental fees. And that pool of money, which will generate almost $50,000, goes to help not only fund the software, but the enforcement of that as well.
Well, the impact on affordable housing for a workforce has been just tragic. I think we're all seeing that.
Yeah, there's a related issue that we've run into, and that is, maybe it's our fault, and let's all go stick our head or work harder at it. We're having a hard time with particularly the ERBO, Airbnb type folks, but not exclusively with them, that actually give us a legitimate contact person, address, phone number, email, so that we can communicate with them. The person owns the house, they live in California, somebody else is making sure at the end of every week that it's ready for the next occupant. And then they haven't remitted. How can we find them? We know they're in the business, they know they're in the business, but where are they? We get stuff back from the post office, not this address anymore, that kind of stuff. And we're trying to get everybody to fill out a business registration form so that we've got contact information that's legitimate. And then 6 months later, we get, not me anymore. Somebody else is doing it now.
So in my previous life, before I do what I do now, we were maybe, and interestingly enough, we would just start pretending like we were booking. So I would reach out over VRBO and be interested in, I kind of want to talk to the owner. I want to understand. I want to see a video. I want more. And that's how we started getting owner contact information. I also use Montana Cadastral quite a bit. Montana Cadastral is, or that hunting one.
Onyx.
Yeah, yeah. So, I use a lot of those to get to the root owner, or to the root owner's CPA or, you know, that entity. It's not 100%, but it was 70 to 80%, which was helpful. But we just pretended we were guests. And I'm really interested in staying at your place at such and such up at Big Sky. How does this work? Do you have a property manager? Are you doing it yourself? I had different motives because I ran their rental division. So I was trying to find the people who were doing it behind my back. But it would link the same way that you're trying to do it.
Yeah, we've done some of that. We've got 5 members of our board, and we're doing it voluntarily. We've got a limited staff capacity.
Yeah.
So, but some of them we haven't been able to track down basically that way.
Where the counties on property tax basis, I mean, the same property tax on.
Oh, yeah, I pull property tax bills all the time too.
Has property tax base for that property?
Well, their mailing addresses on property.
It's still gonna be the
It's
same,
cadastral.
same information you get off Cadastral. What are some, I mean, this seems to be something that we're all facing, and one thing I'm just can't believe is we can't share information with the state or get information back, because they're collecting their lodging tax, we need to collect our
This is
resort
Department
tax.
of Revenue, right?
Yeah, and I'm just,
Steve's taking a note.
I mean, there's gotta be some, you know, there's some good things that come out of this, and some
Public information, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And as Richard says, we have obligations of confidentiality. You know, what's your problem?
We're interlocal governments. It's governments
Yeah.
working together. Right.
Yeah.
And to your point, you know, I mean, it'd be nice if the state were tracking all this and then telling us, and we're not spending $18,000 for a license that.
They want the same information.
Exactly. And so there's duplicative efforts
Well,
going on.
they want compliance with their bed tax.
Yeah.
They just don't seem to care much about compliance with our resort tax.
Could we
It's the
put
same
together a group
fundamental
letter
issue.
that we all sign?
That's what I'm just wondering, if there's some approach to the Department of Revenue with the resort tax community saying, we want you to work with us. Yeah.
Show us the law that you can't pass it down to us, because that's where I want to see, where does this confidentiality, where is it stated, just because you say it, where is it stated where you can't get a list of the business
Yeah.
name and address or contact info, other than, I don't really care, because they're gonna hold on to the dollar amount, okay, that money is, that's complicated. I don't think that we care about it, we just want to make sure we've got the businesses.
That's right.
A list of them that we can follow up
You know,
with.
This is not the only place where the state has problems with confidentiality. I run into it all the time from a different angle and on conservation issues. There's all kinds of business applications to do things to the environment that getting basic information out of the state because it's a trade secret, it's confidential information in their application. Sorry, guys, you're shipping my river.
Well,
I have to write it down.
fracking was that way for a long time.
Exactly. It still is.
Well, it still is.
Mike?
You know, how extreme it is that they don't even let the licenses knowledge between county public health licenses. And really, that's another source of revenue. If you're talking about it, when we talk to the counties coming up next week. It's not only that, hey, about hey, how can we get into doing business licenses, even if it's part of the county, but look what it does for, you know, you're putting people in these places and there's no health inspection and such, and that's also more revenue. So it's just not revenue for us, it's revenue for the counties and such. But as I understand it, the Department of Revenue and the County Public Health don't even talk together on licenses.
So if the state has negotiated a settlement with Airbnb, right?
Yep,
That includes confidentiality provisions, you know, we will not disclose, that's just wrong. I mean, somebody needs to call this stuff out.
Sounds like something this group should work on,
Yeah.
try to get resolved. All right. As far as action items, it seems like, we could maybe get the ball rolling on it here in a few months. Get some
Okay.
staff. But it does seem something that we
Well,
could.
I would also, people who are coming from a place with a city attorney, talk to your city attorney about what they think illegal. They're just around the corner. I would certainly buy them a cup of coffee or something.
No, I'm sure we can at least, we go to the city attorney, and
Yeah.
we can, when she has time.
Sure.
Definitely have her at least look into it, because, she's always felt that, our list of short-term rentals is public information, so why is the state not public?
Well, and
that's a weird question.
I don't underestimate, phone calls and letters are one thing, but driving to Helena with the group and saying, we want to meet with the person in DOR who handles this and really have them explain why, maybe we can make some headway on that. Because it's a real issue for all of us, it sounds like. Okay, we covered the lodging data share with the state of Montana during the short-term rental taxation discussion. Ordinance revisions.
It's very broad.
It is very broad, and I know we all have different ordinances and how we do it, but we're definitely looking at a rewrite of our ordinance in the next 12 months to try to clean up some things and make some things simpler. That's all I'm going to say on it, but Mike and Steve may want to find some more.
No, I think that, when we go to look at it, we've already talked about it today. A good part of it is that the law gives you the discretion to better define the luxury, what you are taxing, what you aren't. There's certain things, and, you kind of mentioned it, like in one part of the law where it says if you're a hotel or restaurant, destination fees are, everything is taxed, and that the legal interpretations we've been given in the past is that exemptions, it doesn't mean all with exemptions. It means everything they sell is the definition of it and such. But then trying to make, it bear in your community and how it works, and also how, what is your philosophy? Is it about, like, you would go at it a little differently because you have looked at your property tax rebate is a large part. We never put that in. That's not even in. It's in the municipality law. It's not in the district law and such. So we pretty much, at least in the last 7 years, I think we started to move more towards, and it's not about, we know it's against the law to tax a tourist on an item and not a local. And I think that's partially when they were writing it, and they used a or, and they put local or tourist or transient visitor, and they put or in all of it. All of a sudden, it meant that you could start doing luxuries that a tourist never bought and such. But we're trying to really, when we look at it, we tend it that way. Whether the vote will go that way as we redo it, is to really work on trying to get leverage out of what people buy and not raise the cost of living here without giving an advantage to it. You start taxing things that a tourist doesn't buy, we're raising the cost of living to people here, and we know that people struggle to live here, that work here.
And I will just reiterate, there's the political side of what should be in the ordinance, and then there's the practical compliance side. And the more complicated we make it, the more compliance headaches we create for ourselves. And do any of us have the resources to really audit and ensure compliance the way we'd like to? To me, a simple ordinance that can be read plainly and is more black and white and less gray is setting you up for an easier compliance situation. With the volume of business that's going on around here, I think we need to do that. It gets kind of crazy.
Guys, audit, when you do an audit, is it a year long? They go back a year?
We randomly pick
10 businesses.
10 businesses a year.
And then you look back
And it's
over
interesting.
12 months.
Yeah.
So we look back over the summer months.
Yeah.
Actually 3 months.
Oh, interesting.
So they could be underreporting from the other 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we've been, I guess, willing to put out there financially. Of course, that's our big season too. But
Yeah.
So they could be, honor system, not honorable the other 9 months.
We're trying to, and the auditors did it this year for us. They started putting in, but their recommendation is that the finance director follow up with the business to determine, because we've had some where they just can't determine what their resort tax was that they should pay because they don't keep records. But that their recommendation is we couldn't determine it, and we recommend that the finance officer follow up. There's no way in our city code that I can go and audit records. They have to hold them, but the only enforcement that we feel that's been in there, and this is just, you know, how it's been in the past, I should say, is that the auditors are the ones that can go and look at records. So I used to work for our auditors, and I did the resort tax audits, so it was easy. I'm like, come on, give me a little bit more. I know how to do this. Give me the opportunity to go after these businesses that you can't get a hold of, because some just flat out won't try to, like, they'll just ignore them. I can't do the audit stuff. Give me the opportunity to go and follow up for more months, because we know that you haven't paid. And sometimes it's opposite. Maybe it's not that they haven't paid, but they've overpaid. Let us look back and refund them the money that's due to them. So, you know, on both sides of it, I'm hoping when we do our rewrite, which we've gotten pretty loud and clear, don't touch your ordinance till the vote time. When we do that, give us some tools for enforcement. There's the option that random selection, 12 businesses a year, I mean, that's such a small portion of our community.
So your current ordinance doesn't embody auditing provisions?
No, it has to be external auditor.
Oh, yeah, and you want to,
That's
yeah,
it.
we use an external.
And we don't have any way, like, if we now, there are some businesses that have come forward when they're like, I got selected for an audit. I haven't been paying the 3%, because we went 2 to 3. I haven't been paying 3% since it was supposed to go up to 3%. And then she voluntarily let me go back and look, and then we requested that she make payment, and she did. But, you know, I think there's times when you get the report and you're like, really, your sales dropped like that much, you know, from prior times. Can't I do something? So, you know, at that point, that's where we haven't really done anything. We leave it up to the auditors that they'll randomly get selected. I feel like we should have some kind of, at least detailed in our code, that yes, it allows us, you know, city staff to follow up if they feel there's a discrepancy or, you know, have a question about your reporting.
I wonder
Really
if there
applies to us
could
as
be
well.
triggers in the ordinance that say if your collections, you know, vary dramatically from one period to the next, we're gonna ask some
You
questions.
trigger an audit.
Yeah, we have an
or
option.
local one.
That's what I like to see.
something like that, yeah.
So I mean, there are particular people that I know just aren't being honest.
Mhm.
But I
Well,
can't say
you-
go
you
on.
divide-
Yeah.
You divide their collections by 3% and you say, no, that ain't even close to what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, we all do that.
It's always a question, you know, is it that they didn't collect it, or is it that they collected it and held on to it?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably more likely the case.
A lot of them, yeah, we have a lot of businesses during, that, you know, struggle maybe during the slower shoulder seasons that I think have for their businesses with resort tax. And we remind them, you're late, that money is, you're stealing from the city taxpayers, that money is to be in the city coffers by the 20th of the following month. You know, and they get the hint, but at the same time, they're strapped for cash, they really don't have an option but to wait, you know, another month or two before they get money to do it.
So nice to hear commonality.
Yeah. We all struggle
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
That's why we get together. This is the self-help group.
You all just start feeling
And I know all our ordinances are different. This is a tough conversation because we have different issues, but yeah, we're about to, I think, do a rewrite on our ordinance, and it's very daunting with the idea to try to make things more black and white and easier for the tax collector to follow as well as for us.
But I will admit, it's a popular tax. I mean, when we went
Oh,
from 2 to
sure,
3%.
Yeah, 84%.
Congratulations.
So I don't think we're gonna
Yeah.
have too much of a heartburn
Yeah.
getting it passed.
Yeah.
But I think that key is it'll pass as long as you show, hey, we're gonna do more property tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think as long as that's in there and they can see the projects that are being done. Of course, we constantly telling people, here's where your resort tax dollars went, here's how they're being spent, here's the projects that are being done. I think all that helps.
Yeah.
That's a lot of property tax relief too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is.
Whatever towns give
Yeah.
you 15%.
You do 15%?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you white this as 25%?
And our collection last year, we almost were at 3.914 million, so 25%.
It's materials, huh? And that's a straight remittance to the property tax.
That, yeah, that's,
They get that,
other
they
people
check
keep
that.
the 5, and then vendors are keeping 5%,
Yeah.
so the 3.9 we collected doesn't include that 5%.
Well-
So we would have exceeded 4 million.
Well, a lot of what we do is effectively property tax relief too, is we fund agencies that could property tax because they get funding from us, they don't have to, so.
Or at least they do less.
Right, they have this.
Right, right.
Well, and that's what I was gonna touch on is, it's not part of the state tax statute for resort tax communities, it is, or, for areas, it is for communities, but when you go through the legislative history, it was clearly meant to offset the property taxes that the locals pay because of the influx of tourists. And just personally, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but that's when Mike and Steve hit on this. We fund a lot of the fire department, and their only other funding mechanism is property tax. We fund a lot of the sheriff. And so when we're allocating things, it's looking at things that would otherwise be falling on the property taxpayers that we try to give it. So it's an indirect property tax relief. It's not formalized here, and that's
But we probably should. I mean,
it's
we could
an
add
issue,
those
and-
things up,
yeah.
and, I mean, calling some attention to
Yeah.
that issue is probably.
Yeah, it's either doing them and pay for it with property tax, or you didn't belong without them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, so half the number of fire trucks you need.
It's Steve's points earlier, why it's done differently, and that is, first that it was West Yellowstone, they were breaking new ground on that. Why the rebate is in there wasn't because the tourists were costing the individual homeowners any money, it was to get the damn thing passed.
Yeah, right.
Passed is why it was in there, it wasn't about they need money,
Political
money,
necessity.
and the tourists are costing every homeowner money.
Yeah,
Those
right.
homeowners make money some way about tourism and that. When we went through and did it, we said, well, number one, we'd rather take care of the services and not have it paid for. And number two, because of Big Sky being perceived what it is, we didn't want that people would just, even some of them told us that, yeah, so you're gonna get the tax and you're gonna give the rich people back more, reduce their property taxes. And we go, well, that's not gonna float in the legislature. So, everyone's a different part of it, but the whole property tax thing and how much you give back, and that really is the political thing you need to do. Each community finds out how they do it differently.
And we see a 47 mil reduction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's significant. Thrilled out with
And people like seeing that minus sign on their tax bills. For those that don't look at their tax bills, some of them don't believe it. I know there was some idiot radio announcer that was telling everybody that you don't really get property tax. So we've had to overcome some of that. So in our last newsletter, we took a whole page, showed a tax bill, highlighted where, see this minus sign? This is your resort tax, property tax relief.
Well, as
So
Richard
look
said, you
for it
either
on-
get property tax relief or you don't get the service. So it's one of the two.
Aren't we the same as you, since we stole everything from you?
Well, as we were saying, we don't have it, it's not explicit in our ordinance. It doesn't say that we have to give so much.
It's not explicit in
Not the
state
ballot.
law.
Nor is it in our ordinance. I'm just talking about what I'm talking personally, I realize that funding the fire department is property tax relief.
Yeah, no,
And so, yeah, so you guys are very similar.
But your ballot was different, that you took.
Yeah,
to
our
the-
ballot
Mhm.
That's right.
Mhm. So you do have property tax relief.
Oh, yeah.
But everybody else is sharing. Ours reads that it's 5% for property tax relief and 5% to rebate fees that appear in the property tax bill in equal amounts to those taxes.
So rather than being spread out ad valorem like the property tax
Yeah.
is, the more property you got, the more you get back. That 5% goes same to everybody. And off the top of my head, it represents about half of what we have to pay for solid waste disposal in Gardner, which is 50 miles away from everything else. But it's still, you know, a significant amount of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else want to air dirty laundry on their ordinance? Wife, you don't have to talk. You got a real action coming up.
You guys at Big Sky have been a great resource for us. Basically, we
saw what
took a look at your ordinances, pretty much copied them, filed off the certain numbers.
So the next agenda item that we have here is something that we're currently struggling with, which is multi-year appropriation process. And to give you guys a little bit of background on it, the way that the Resort Tax Board has functioned since the beginning of the Resort Tax Board is one Resort Tax Board will not obligate a future Resort Tax Board to funding. So we have an annual appropriation cycle that you get that money. It's money that we already have that we allocate, and we're not committing future funds. The exception to that would be our bonding capability, which has not been utilized, but we have $500,000 of bonding capability that the board can do. Anything above that needs to go out to the voters. But recently it has come up, and what kind of brought this to the topic, we have a very interesting sheriff's department funding mechanism here in Big Sky. We have 6 deputies that live here in Big Sky or cover our area. And we have a 3-way funding mechanism for those 6 deputies. Gallatin County pays a third, Madison County pays a third, and the Big Sky Resort Area District pays a third. And that is a 3-year agreement that we enter in with the counties. And so this came to light. The fire department brought this, has also asked for a similar, can we get a 3-year deal with you? And so it's something we're currently struggling with. And it's, I don't know what else to say. It's an issue we're working on right now with their attorney. I'm not sure where this is going to lead. We've got, you know, like everything else, we've got attorneys on this side that say one thing, we got attorneys on the other side that say another thing, but I was just curious. I know I asked the question of Virginia City. I talked to the mayor, Justin, and said, you guys don't do multi-year agreements. Dan, I left you a message to see if West Yellowstone does. Does any other community or district do multi-year agreements with recipients of funds?
That was included in the ballot measure. And that a certain amount of our revenue is based off 25% of our revenue, basically. 15% of it goes to capital acquisition of the visitor center and public restrooms for chamber managers. And
our chamber CEO, her ears are really perking up right now.
Hey, 50% of that is the capital acquisition of the property. And once that's paid, that 15% reverts to our general fund.
Interesting, okay.
And 10% was sliced off for operations and maintenance of the public restroom. This is a bit central. Because it's in a building that somebody has to maintain all the time. And we didn't want the situation where we financed a restroom and 5 years or 10 years down the road, nobody was able to maintain it. And so we set that piece of the revenue aside for that purpose in the ballot.
So that was actually by referendum.
That was by the referendum.
Do you guys ever have requests though for 2 or 3 year funding cycle?
We are just now in the process of having people make applications for things. That, boy, it would be nice if we could spread this out over a couple of 3 years, but we're not allowed to do so.
We have a couple of things going on here. I mean, one is when we fund like our funding levels to the fire department are a pretty important source of their funding.
Yeah.
And so their board, in terms of responsibly managing their financial situation, they want some assurance that that ain't going away. Yeah. And so they prefer to deal with a kind of a rolling 3-year contract so that we can count on doing that, because they don't want to hire staff 1 year and fire staff the next, that sort of thing. I mean, the other thing we've got going on around here, and I'm sure we all have this, is a lot of the projects that people seek funding for are things that are building season dependent. Well, we have such a short building season, nobody can get anything done in a single year. So spreading things beyond an annual appropriation cycle would seem to make sense from that standpoint too. But you know, as our tax base or the volume of our collections has grown to the point where we're really making significant investments in places like the fire department and certainly have been for the sheriff's department, just relying on that is something that they prefer to assure with some kind of a contract, just to, so it's predictable.
Well, so to be clear on what Steve was saying, we have, if you look at the fire department, they went a 3-year deal moving forward. With the funds in years 2 and 3, we actually haven't collected. You know, we have the money in the bank for year 1. The second example, Steve referenced, we tackled, and we have, if we have the money in the bank and housing is our you know, this is where this came to front is, they can't plat and build and do everything in a 12-month cycle. And so now we've allowed that to be a 2 or 3 year, but that money's already in the bank. We commit that and it's allocated over the 2 or 3 years. The one we're really struggling with right now is the fire department example of, you know, can we be obligating a future board to a decision that a board made today?
You know, part of it, you know, we operate on a different than municipalities because you budget your money that's coming in and also spending it in your budget and that. And if you would fall short on revenues in your resort tax collection, say for 5 years or something like that, you at least have some other means of revenues coming in that would help you balance your, you know, balance and cut your expenses, balance it and such. We don't have anything except resort tax. So it's always been you spend the money you collected the year before. Or we don't, you know, you don't get, we aren't even thinking about how much money we're spending, they're going to collect in the next year. Next year we're saying we have this much we already have in the bank. Whereas municipalities seem to work on revenues coming in during the year and match their expenditures with it, I believe. They don't operate off of what was in the bank. If you collected $4 million, it's not sitting there in the bank. You already spent it during the year.
Municipalities are, they're a going concern philosophies. Like, you know, we're not going out of business.
No, I'm just saying that, but it's different. But that's why we came to the idea on like the housing project. We said we can stretch it over 3 years, but we can only spend the money that's in the bank, not the money that we think is going to be in the bank over the next year.
So we, for construction, so 65% of our resort tax goes to street reconstruction. Street projects are spread over 3 years. Maybe we've got 3 different phases. I would say there have been times where we have contracted amounts that have not been appropriated. So there's a difference between the words appropriation and contracted, right? So for us, even though we've signed the contract, we actually have not appropriated the funds until the council has approved the budget. And for our resort tax, the only amount that we can actually budget, it's not what we think we're going to collect that year, it's what we collected in the prior year. There have been times with, like, we had West 7th, it was a very long stretch of road that we reconstructed from rural to more of a city street with lights. There was a time where we all, you know, we were tracking, are we going negative? Now, during a year, we were close. We had park revenue to loan temporarily, but at the same time, for us, it was where are we going to be at year end? So at year end is where I care. Where do we come out at year end? It's rare, but anything that we do on the construction side is going to span more than the current appropriation. And that means they are appropriating for future councils have to appropriate that money. I don't know that we would have another funding source readily available necessarily, because while we do have street funds, we're not Whitefish. Everybody thinks we have a lot of money. We actually don't, and that's why resort taxes are a good thing. But you know, so we have other projects that are going on. You know, it's not just a resort project. So I would say there are times that we contract with the vendor for appropriations that haven't been approved by the council until a future year.
But they are also like yours, that 65% that goes towards those projects was initially in the ballot.
Yeah.
It was in the ballot. It wasn't that the board, you know, It's already done. It was done by the people that voted it in and said this is where it goes from. So she has the assurance to finish that road the next year.
Because 65% of that.
65% of that is going to that. And it was decided not by the board, but by the electorate.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I see that part of it.
Yeah.
The other risk you run is the recession, because we have Canadian traffic very heavily in our area, and we saw a huge hit when their actual oil industry went down. So you're expecting to collect these monies, but then all of a sudden you don't. So it can extend it longer. But yeah, I guess when you don't have that voted in 65%, it is difficult to say that I can see your guys' problem. And issues there. That's tough.
Dan, what were you good at?
I got two things.
Yeah.
One, we use resort tax as the basis for securing the commercial mortgage. We bought 80 acres, so we use that as backing for that commercial mortgage. So that's one. Two, for our fire department, I don't know if you have that or not, we actually use what we're going to pay the fire department based on projections of the resort tax. So if the resort tax goes up, then they get I think it's and again, I don't have that thing on my, but I think it goes up 1.5% is what the increase in what the fire department will get from the town. Does it guarantee those numbers steadfast? No. But, and then if it goes down, resort tax goes down, then it can be adjusted accordingly. So it's a interesting document that was put together prior to me coming there, and there were some discrepancies on how to interpret. But overall, are we using that resort tax? Yes. Do we have other sources? Kind of like you said, yeah, we're kind of heavily dependent on the resort tax, but so we have used that to, like I said, back up commercial mortgage.
That's the one that would be most interesting to look at, is backing up that commercial mortgage.
Well, the reason we did it was when we were acquiring it, knowing that we're going to develop, we own the land, we're going to work with developers to do affordable housing, whatever.
Yeah.
That I didn't want to have liens on that property. So that every time I wanted to do something, I'd have to go back to the bank and say, I need everything changed. So by doing it with the resort tax, it left us light that land is unencumbered right now. So if we need to split something off, we can do that.
That's interesting.
So we stay light on our feet.
I think it's fairly clear here that municipalities have some leeway in this that resort tax districts don't.
Yeah.
We've carried projects over. For instance, somebody planned, one of our people, organizations we appropriated money to, had plans to get this project done. And the contractors were all busy and they couldn't get done. So they come to us at the end of the year with a request. We appropriated this X amount of money for this year. It can't happen. We still want to get it done. We've got a contractor on foot to do it next year. And they're asking us, can we carry that over?
Yeah.
And at that point, it's really the board's decision. Yep, we can carry that over. It comes out of the pot. And essentially, it's a new contract.
We do the same thing. It's a rollover request.
Rollover request. And we've had to do that a fair number of times.
It's probably easier for the council to look at something long term, because I think our commercial mortgage had a 9-year. It says, okay, why 9 years? Because that's when our resort tax is up for reapproval. And then if it doesn't get approved, there's a call provision in there by the bank where they can call it if we're not paying.
Interesting. Okay.
You basically pledging to get that mortgage. You pledge that.
Future recovery.
You were real close to bonding.
Very close.
Very close to it. You made it look like bonding.
But actually, believe it or not, with saving on the legal fees, and also we had a better rate than we could get a bond. That's a better deal for us.
Well, banks are getting into bonding outside of
That's really good.
It's not only D.A. Davidson's. Banks are competing with D.A. Davidson, and they're going to banks quite often for that same reason. There's less cost to it.
Well, we'd love to look into how you did that. It seems, I think Richard may have nailed it though, a municipality versus a district or an area. I'm not sure if it applies, but it at least gives us something to take a look at.
Because I'm new to this discussion, essentially, we keep hearing about affordable housing. It's not a huge issue for the city, but still an issue. The Penny for Housing project, Is that still something of interest as far as moving forward with legislation this year? I mean, you guys mentioned housing, I know you guys are having issues. And if so, like the allocating of the funds then could also be on a year, I guess, education. Because like you said, you can't do housing projects within 1 year typically, right?
It would have to be pretty good, but that's, housing is what forced us to do a 3-year contract, if you will, with our housing trust. But that, once again, that's money allocated, or that's in the bank that year that we allocated, and we just did it for the first time this year.
One thing too, you know, it was a penny for housing, but when it got to the legislature, largely when we were working
With what?
when we were coming down to see you, Dan, we realized that a lot of people even said, we need housing, but we need to build some infrastructure first and such. And so it ended up being an infrastructure bill and housing being part of infrastructure and such. That bill, for what you're talking about, did have a bonding ability in that. So if they were doing projects that were larger and down the road, there could be, if it was an infrastructure one, it might be a very expensive sewer system. Say like, yeah, some things we have done here. There was a sewer bond a few years ago that they did, and it was fun. It was under money pledged on the resort tax and such. So there are ways of doing it, but that, I hope that answers your question about how it'd be a larger project, but also that type of bill. We found that it was way too narrow in just housing because each community has a lot of different problems with their, you know, in fact, most of the people we talked to said infrastructure was a need that had to be corrected before they could even move on to housing.
Dan? No. So, Aaron, to answer your question, our board hasn't discussed offensive legislation for this upcoming session. Curious if the other communities are thinking about it.
I'm hearing from our legislators that it's going to be a topic of discussion. It's going through pretty well. And I don't know what they're going to think about or discuss or anything else. But also, I will say that there is already a bill that's been drafted that goes after inclusionary zoning. It essentially says that you can't do inclusionary zoning. You can't even do a fee, which would preclude fee in lieu, like for inclusionary zoning, or even an impact. You're going to say that all this construction and stuff is raising the price and actually creating an impact fee would preclude that as well. So that legislation is out there. I did see that the other day. I sent it to my assemblyman and I said, kill this, please.
I was going to say one more.
Yeah, but you know, but I think what's going to happen too, though. I mean, I don't think the realtors associations and the builders associations they're going to do something. So I think they're starting here, and if that doesn't work, and I think in the meantime, we're going to get ours passed. We're going heavily after inclusionary zoning. I'll bet we wrap up beginning of next year. Then we're going to see a lawsuit shortly thereafter. I know there was a lawsuit in Idaho that was won by the Realtors Association. So who knows? We'll see. Then again, as I read through, you know, a lot of their cases, it was like you're putting all the affordable housing on backs of the developers, whereas we have like 20-some to 30 initiatives, of which inclusionary zoning is one. Right. So we're doing a number of different things. And so I've explained that to the developer. You're trying to solve this on our backs. I said, no, you are a piece of the larger pie. But we'll see where that goes. But I think there's going to be an uphill battle for us in that arena as well.
So where is that coming out of? Who's sponsoring that, or what's the?
You know, Jerry, G-R-Y. I don't know if he's a senator or a senator. I don't know.
I love it.
Yeah, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so it's coming down. But I mean, we're pushing heavily on our other initiatives that we have. We just got awarded tax credits through the Montana Board of Housing. So we're going to get 38 units next year for that. The city owns some property that we're actually turning over into affordable housing. We'll see 35 units there, probably start next fall or the spring of 2020.
Did you have to get a census district that showed blight or low income to get those tax credits? Because
No.
that's something we've struggled with is the incomes here.
Yeah, well, I mean, they look at all sorts of things when it comes to those incomes. One of the big complaints I know about the Montana Board of Housing is they have a scoring criteria. And so as long as they use that scoring criteria, I think they take all that kind of stuff into consideration. But we lucked out. I mean, I think we were one vote away from not getting it. And I just think there's probably the same with you guys. There's just that feeling out there that you've got enough money.
Oh, hell yeah.
And all that, we
get
got
that all
our
the
share
time.
of billionaires and stuff, but that doesn't mean that
You don't
the
have
city
people-
government and all the people working in restaurants and the service industry are making that much money. So we're really going after it pretty heavy. And we even have had several developers approach us and essentially offer us inclusionary. They're saying, hey, approve this project and we'll give you 20% of all these units to whatever, AMI that you're going to require of us. So we're seeing a lot of that. So I would say as long as the economy doesn't tank in the next 3 years, we're going to have 200-300 units of affordable.
Congratulations.
So
That's huge. Yeah.
If all goes well.
What percentage is for ownership as opposed to rental?
So we did a housing needs study in 2016. They estimated by 2020 that we would be 908 units. 600 of those are multifamily, and the other 380 are single family. So it's like 60-40. 60-40.
60-40, 60 rental.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, I ran into one of the gentlemen that was involved in one of those projects that was doing a voluntary inclusionary down in skiing here one day. His son was in a ski race and he was telling me how he was involved in it. He was pretty excited to be working with you.
On the resort tax side, when the additional 1% was proposed, Whitefish has always taken a stance that we're not going to be asking for, even if we were given the additional 1% to try to have the lenders consider, we wouldn't be addressing that. We just went from 2 to 3. There would be big political pushback. So, for affordable housing, we've had to kind of go a different route, and that's where I'm doing a lot of work.
We're having some success. That's impressive.
That is
Really
impressive.
is, as long as it pans out. But I admit it's kind of some of it is changing the face of what we do, and I think it's kind of difficult for the council to wrap their head around it. Some of we're growing really well. The problem is, in order for developers to be able to essentially subsidize this 20% of the housing that they're going to build, they need more density.
Yeah.
And so that's been kind of a sore point. So we'll see where that kind of plays out over the next several months too.
But we need more density than what you currently
The
allow.
developers want more density so that they can foot the bill for this essentially subsidy they're creating.
Well, and density requires water sewer service
Correct.
as well. You don't do that on septic systems.
What percentage of yours will be qualified for subsidies as opposed to if we figure it out,
So-
that the incomes are above the.
Yeah, so HUD pretty much cuts off at 60% of the area median income. So our low-income housing tax credit project that we just got, all those 38 units will be for 60% or less. And so what we decided as a city that the starts of this program, if we get it passed, is we're going to go from 60% above. So there's kind of a middle group in there. The market is taking care of some of the upper stuff. So we kind of defined affordable housing as up to 150% AMI.
Oh.
And between 130 and 150, the market is doing pretty well in there, especially in the multifamily arena. And of course, if we start getting a whole bunch of units, that'll have some downward pressure on some of those rents a little bit, which may help. So we're kind of focusing in that 60 to 120 range. That's where we've identified the sweet spot where the city needs to get involved and take some affirmative approaches.
Yeah.
We're HUD,
Yeah.
we're HUD, we're not touch, and where the market is kind of doing something.
Anyone else? No? All right, well, under other, I wrote down a topic. How about rotating the location of this annual meeting? Anybody else like to host it? And Jared.
Florida, Vegas.
No, I mean, just because Whitney's been so good at getting this organized, we have no ownership over this. Hopefully everybody feels the value in this meeting and would like to continue having an annual meeting with the resort areas. But would love to see if we'd like to rotate this amongst our communities.
Whitefish is definitely open, so.
We're open, it's just we're kind of the one-off up in the corner. If you guys wanna drive.
Summertime
maybe,
whitefish.
yeah.
huh?
Yeah, we could do a summertime one, it might be easier to drive, but you get out of the ski resort, but we have Whitefish Lake, so.
You just have to stay further out of Whitefish. 'Cause we're fine.
Yeah.
Very
But
intense.
glaciers there, you know, you guys, so yeah, I mean, we would obviously be open, we just built brand new city hall a couple years ago, so we have the facilities to hold it, I mean.
All right. Well, we'll work on that, but we don't want to own this. We just wanted to birth it. Let it go.
But we appreciate it, I think it's been really helpful every year since we started.
Great. For us too.
Very helpful.
Does anybody have anything else under other?
I would like to talk about, is there interest from the group to go after, I heard you said you're not interested in the 1%. I know my council is interested in pursuing the legislature to see if they'll do another 1%. And they're mainly interested in infrastructure, tourist impacted infrastructure would be their language. No affordable housing, I think there was community development, I think we used that, maybe that was last time. But I know my council's interested in pursuing it, so.
We supported that things in the last session. I think we would be in support of it. We would not, I don't think, be asking voters to approve an increase anytime soon, probably something in a 5 to 10 year horizon. We're relatively new. This is like our fourth year of having a tax in place. So figure it's too early to go back to the voters and ask for substantive changes. But having the authority available in statute is something that we would support.
I think that's what we're mainly looking at. I don't know the town would go immediately after the 1%, but we would like to have that option. I'm not sure. I know at one point they were talking about with the gateway communities. I know at one point they were kicking around 3 or 4%. I'm not sure what they decided upon that particular number. I'm not sure with the other people looking for sales tax. I don't know if they're going 3 or 4%, but I know that one's out there too. But we'd like to have that opportunity because we are looking at a wastewater treatment plant that we need to do for our next DEQ permit. Probably, they'll probably tell us that.
This came up recently. Earlier this week, we had a presentation by our water and sewer district here about what they're staring in the face. And phase 1 of the sewage treatment thing they're considering is $21.7 million. That's phase 1.
Yes.
And there's other investments that are going to have to be made on the water side as well. So, you know, what came up in the discussion was, you know, way back when the resort tax was conceived, somebody took a scientific wild ass guess that 3% would be a good number. But nobody really has tried to quantify what has been the tourist impact on our infrastructure. And my guess is if we did some arithmetic, it'd be way more than that.
Sure.
And I think it would be instructive to everybody if we would make an effort to try to compile data like that to represent to the state what tourists are doing to these communities.
I think my number one question I got the last round, that was my first round I participated with you guys on that. My number one question from whether it be senators, aides, or whatever, calling me was, what have you done with your money? You know, they didn't care about salary. What projects have you done? That was one of their questions. Another question was, what, if we give you the 1%, where is that going to go? And I think based on that, it was usually, I'm like, oh, you know, look, all our, you know, sewers are 25 years old, our water lines are, you know, and I went through that and I provided them what I always call that white paper, that one page that I would send out to them. So that was key, I think, to a lot of them was that. What did you do in the past? What do you want to do with it coming up? And they were interested in that infrastructure. They know that a majority of us here are economic engines for the state of Montana. We bring a lot of money into their coffers, and I think us having one day, many of you know we do have a water moratorium on in West Yellowstone. If someday people come in and they're all ready to take their showers to go into the park, and we say, have no water. One blip like that will really change where people stay in the state of Montana. So I think they understand that, and I think if we have a chance of getting anything through, I think it's that kind of an infrastructure thing, which obviously I think you guys made a great point earlier. To do the housing, like for example, the town of West Yellowstone, we need the water, we need the sewer for build housing. I just figured out on our sewer plant, we have, I always say it's, well, lack of a better term, it's a lagoon system. We have 500 units that we can do based on what's there right now, if DEQ allows us to do a couple things there. 500 units is 500 housing units. Right now, I have probably 300 hotel rooms sitting on that want to come online, and then also I have 180 unit condo development, affordable condo unit development that wants to come online. So there, just with my 500 units.
Yeah.
My DEQ permit comes due here in 4 years now, a little less than 4 years, a little more than 4 years. But again, I know what they're going to tell me. When they say test for these things, and you got a lagoon system, you know that when you're testing for this, there's no way you're going to make this. So you know what it is. They didn't say, here's what you need to do. Yeah. But it's obvious. The writing is on a document that thick. So that's what we're looking at. So the council has already put together $30,000 to pursue this effort. So I guess I'm here to try to gauge your feelings.
Mike?
I think that, especially the way you all talk about it, is, and I can go back to when we first went there and to a written testimony that said, do remember that when we got the resort tax, that this bill is not a tax. This is a bill to let people decide whether they want to tax and such, and that's a distinct difference than what it is we believe to be at times and such. I think we need, this is making sure if you're looking ahead 5, 10 years, whatever, next year, whatever it is, your need would be, number one, to have, you don't know if you're ever going to get it anyhow. How many of you had your resort tax defeated a couple times before you even got it through? Not, it depends how what you're trying to do with it, how it's written. Some of it, how you wrote it to say it had to go 65% to our roads or something like that. It's how you write it. That this is just getting an arrow in your quiver to take care of the problems that we all have because of the expansive growth in our communities and such. I think that, but if we do it, it's nice to hear that there's other dollars towards it. Last time our district, we kind of ran with it, but we paid for the lobbyists and such to do it. I would think that it would need shared for it and such. But to be fair, it would have to probably, be shared on either what you can do or at least prorated on what your amount of your collections are compared to someone else and such. And also, you have to get a budget.
There's also money and there's also sweat equity.
Yeah, everybody got sweat equity.
Set for smaller communities to put that sweat equity in it.
And, that can be talked about, later as far as that goes. But I really think that, the thing of it is do these boards feel that they want to have that arrow in the quiver to take care of infrastructure?
We're not asking for the tax, we're asking for the opportunity.
The authority.
That's it. The opportunity.
It's no different than when we went after in the same letter I'm referring to that said this is not a tax. It even said in that letter that, remember, it was defeated at these communities. It's not a sure thing. It's only a bill to give people the opportunity, should they devise a program that people want in it. And that's the challenge a lot of times, is doing the political side along with what you're getting for it to do it. But without that as a tool, we're gonna have to say, what are we gonna do when we have to fund all of these other projects? We have them coming up, as Steve's mentioned. We're doing just starting a visioning project for what we all have in this community. And I think the total of that, will be dwarfed by what Steve was even talking about, because he was.
But the only alternative we have, if we don't have this, is property taxes.
It is.
Or not doing it at all, which,
And I hate to say, when you're dealing with DEQ, it's not a choice of not doing it at all.
well, yeah, well, they do enforcement moratoriums, so.
That is a problem, but, that is the question, and that's one of the motivating factors. It's not, for some it helps by having a rebate on your property tax. For others, it's not having to pay as much property tax. But, and when you're talking about these big projects that are becoming necessities in our communities, you're talking about, if not this tax, then what tax?
Or fee for service, like sewer and water systems are mostly fee for service, but, the fact that we've plumbed several, over pretty close to $200,000 into our sewer and water system is money that the ratepayer did not have to pay. Has allowed them to deal with some of the ongoing maintenance issues so that they can preserve the money they need to finance the next big project thing with our treatment plant, waste treatment plant. So it all.
Everyone's going to get a balance because that bill, when you're this 1% isn't going to solve most people's problems. It's just going to assist in maybe getting you over the top not being able to, because you can't put enough mills on your property tax to get the job done. So once again, it gives each community the power to make their own decisions.
James, has this been a topic of Red Lodge and council meetings?
It was a topic 2 years ago,
But it hasn't been.
It hasn't recently, and we have several new city councilors and mayors. In the past, it is, we were definitely in support of that extra 1%.
And Dan, to speak bluntly for Big Sky, it hasn't been a topic at a board meeting. We do have an upcoming board meeting, December 12th, that we can make that a topic for our board.
If you guys are interested in pursuing that, I like I said, I need to get a good idea of what's going on. I'm going to need you guys' help. You guys been through it. I just kind of followed on your coattails the last time and understanding the process and how to do it and things along that line. So I'll definitely need some help. And it was a former mayor, right?
Yep.
That was involved. I know he was involved in a couple times at the Senate when we doing some testimony and things like that. So.
Any other agenda items for this group? Maybe break for cocktails.
I would just say, if it's not something you discuss with your boards, we should all, we should circle the wagon very quickly to say, is that something that you can participate in, and to what degree can you participate with money or time towards something, so that it's made as a group. It's not to be carried by any one district unless they really think they want to do it and such. But it also, it just pulls us all together, close support and such. But the legislative session is just out upon us.
Okay, hearing no other. Last agenda item is close with public comment. Any public comment? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn? All right, everybody, including the audience, is invited across the street for beer and wine and appetizers.